Hey guys, it's Bonnie from Dwelling Logs. I wanted to come on and give you guys an update on our quarter two, how it's been going, and our resources, and kind of to sum up our, I don't know what to call it, Shakespeare/Julius Caesar term. And so I want to share with you guys the resources, the ones that we liked, that we didn't like. I don't think there are very many of those, but we can talk through that, kind of recap that, show you, because I also have a whole bunch of things to take back to the library that have been waiting, and we're just about done the things on our list for this. So we're going to wrap this up. We're going to work on it till the end of February to kind of wrap the rest of the end little bits that we haven't gotten finished yet done, and then we're going to be starting our new term, and I'm going to be sharing about that as well. We're going to do a bunch of Canadian studies, but I thought it was a good opportunity to quickly jump on today before I send all these library books back and just show you guys how we learned about Julius Caesar and Shakespeare. We are a family in the Canadian prairies. My name is Bonnie. I have 3 kids, 11, 9, and 6. And we are starting to do more Charlotte Mason style homeschooling since last spring. So we're still a little bit newbie to the kind of more hardcore Charlotte Mason principles and habits and things like that. We've been loving it. I love that we pull from our own shelves so much more. I love that we library shop so much more. I love the classical education bits that are coming in. We have not decided to learn Shakespeare consistently through all of our terms, but we did take some time to learn about him today. And I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on learning about Shakespeare. And we had a really good experience with it. I'm a little bit maybe more particular than some other moms that I've talked to, but I can share my thoughts on that too. And you can decide for yourselves, like, what's good. I do want to share the resource I made because I think it's really good. My kids really got a lot out of it. It could be used as a spine if you were doing a bigger Shakespeare study, or if you just wanted a kind of a snapshot, shorter study of it. This is my Shakespeare family lesson. It's on my website. It was in a bundle, a few years ago now. So it's been a while since it's been in a bundle. So if you haven't purchased a bundle through For the Love of Homeschooling, and it was also in a Wild Feather bundle with this inside, then the only place to get it is on my website. And I can kind of give you guys a bit of a flip through that. I'm sure that I had posted a video earlier of when we started our term, kind of what we were doing, but basically the idea was to continue our math and grammar, reading. Some of my younger kids are still working on reading. I have a struggling reader, so a lot of the grammar time is just reading time for them, which is going very well. I'll have to share more about that in another video too. We do Bible, we tried to do a lot of nature study, but it's kind of hit and miss. We're still working on the habit of nature study, and art appreciation and music composer. We try to weave that in. But in this video, I really specifically want to talk about what we've been doing for specifically Julius Caesar and press the wrong button, Julius Caesar and Shakespeare resources. Now, the reason why I wanted to do Julius Caesar for our Shakespeare, with our Shakespeare study, is because when I looked at the Shakespeare plays, like I said, I'm just a bit picky, and there was some humor. I feel like my oldest is old enough to pick up on a little bit of that sexual humor, and there are just little things that were maybe funny in the old days that aren't funny anymore, and things that I don't feel comfortable joking with, or I don't know where I stand with things. And I just was not comfortable with anything except for Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar is a violent play, of course. Julius Caesar dies. He gets stabbed. If you don't know the history, Julius Caesar, he gets a little too cocky and people want to take him down a lot, not just a notch, and he ends up getting brutally murdered. We did, the cool thing about doing this Julius Caesar play with your Charlotte Mason flair, if you want that, is you can incorporate Plutarch, because Plutarch was who Shakespeare would have studied for his play. So we did Julius Caesar through Plutarch and through Shakespeare, which was cool. We also learned a lot about Julius Caesar and the wars on the Gauls, which tied into the Asterix and Obelix comics that my sons love. And so that was a cool tie-in. We learned a little bit about ancient Greece kind of on the side. So anyway, I'm just going to go and grab my resources that we've been using, books specifically, or any studies that we've thrown in, and we'll go through. I'm going to start with my Shakespeare family lesson because I think that if you're interested in Julius Caesar and Shakespeare, or both, this is you know, I don't like to do too much self-promotion because I don't want to be like, oh, mine's the best. But we really enjoyed it. My kids really liked it, genuinely. And even today, my son was like, Mom, I saw your picture on a page. And I was like, yeah. He's like, why? I was like, because I made it. He was like, whoa. So anyway, it's just a fun thing. So I'll give you a flip through of this, and we'll go through the different things that we've been using for Julius Caesar and Shakespeare studies. Okay, more than telling you like every little thing that we did, I kind of want to do more like this worked or this didn't work, and just sort of what we tied into our studies. I think that would be the most interesting. So I just want to mention that we have these big like William Shakespeare's plays and some commentary. We haven't used this at all. Just saying, we got a smaller version of the Julius Caesar play from the library. And I'll show you some more resources there, but I will just admit that our big, huge Shakespeare collection that I was like, yay, we finally get to use it, haven't touched it. Yeah, so just saying. Also, side note, in our desire to be a little bit more classical and Charlotte Mason-y, we are doing Latin this year, and this was a really fun tie-in with all of the Roman learning and Caesar, and just we talked a lot about Roman language and Latin. And it was cool that we were learning Latin. So I just thought I'd throw that in, that it was cool to do that as well. We use this Latin for Children, Primer A. I think I've talked about this in a different video. We're liking it so far. I'll have to do more of a review after we're even farther along, probably not to the end of the year. Okay, Shakespeare Family Lesson. Highly recommend this resource. It's not huge, but it goes through a lot of like really good core things. Okay, so you're going to learn, I have mapping, who Shakespeare is, the period of time. There's some click and scan quick video clips, some fun little posters you can print out. There's coloring pages in the back. Talks about who he is as a poet, the plays that he wrote. Also iambic pentameter, like the rhythm of poetry and how to understand and read that. It goes through the parts of a play. So I have an act and scene here to go through. Also, the start of a playhouse and the Globe Theatre, so the history behind that a little bit, and theater itself. We go through the like Thalia and Melpomene, if I'm saying that right. And then conspiracy theories on Shakespeare, because apparently that's jury's out. Most people, just FYI, think it's William Shakespeare of Avon or whatever, or Stratford, William of Stratford. But there are a few other alternative theories. And then there is an introduction to the play Julius Caesar. I do give a little bit of a warning just with the nature of the story, and then some resources to help you study that play. And then your coloring pages and a little bit of copywork stuff in the back. So if you want an overview of Shakespeare and to teach your kids about Shakespeare, but you're not maybe ready to enter into the plays, maybe you're like me and there's some plays you just don't want to read to your kids at this age or this time, or you just want to learn about Shakespeare and you don't necessarily want to go through his plays, but you want to learn his place in history, his importance in the English language, then I'm going to recommend this for a resource. And that's on my website. I will link it below. The other thing, probably the favorite thing from my oldest, was this book. It's a little bit hard to find. I did find it on Amazon, but I don't think it's even, it seems to me like I'm wondering if it's even in print, because I can still find it for sale from some places, but not everywhere. But this is Shakespeare's Julius Caesar by Adam Sexton and Hayando Park, the Manga edition. So I think I looked it up. My understanding that manga is kind of like an anime style of art, and it is graphic novel style. But the cool thing is the speech bubbles hold the words of Shakespeare's play. So your kids reading this aren't just getting the story rewritten, they're getting the Shakespeare play. And yes, there is ugly stuff in here. I have a lot more rules and parameters with sexual content than I do with like blood and gore and stuff. So I don't know, I'm a real boy mom. This was very interesting to my kids and I was okay with them reading it. So just to give you a little flip through, but this was a really good way. I handed this to my son at the very beginning and it gave him a fun taste of what we were going to be doing as to do with Julius Caesar's life and of Shakespeare. So it kind of put a good taste in his mouth of like, oh yeah, like this is great. Like I would like to learn more about this, or I at least have a foundation to go into further study about this. another thing to put into your kids' hands to get them excited about Shakespeare, and I really recommend this, is all of the William Shakespeare books by, who's the author again? Ian Doescher. So he writes modern stories in iambic pentameter in Shakespearean English. And we have the Star Wars collection. We also have the Back to the Future book, so the Back to the Future story. We don't have it, but I think there is, oh, what's it called? It's another movie from like my high school era. I'm forgetting now, but it's more of like a girl book. We also have Avengers in iambic pentameter in Shakespearean English. So I really recommend this. It's by Ian Doescher. He's got several books in the Shakespearean English, and it might be a really great warm-up to reading Shakespeare poetry, and or if you're not wanting to do the Shakespeare stories, but you want to learn about Shakespeare, maybe read some iambic pentameter, get into that Shakespearean English, it's a really great alternative story-wise as well. So, highly recommend those. Also, like hunt your library. We have William Shakespeare in the Globe Theatre we found, as well as Twelfth Night. We had a Romeo and Juliet story, just made for children, nice animation, kind of gets them into the mood for your younger kids or even your older kids. Picture books are a great way to bring them in. Okay, and my other recommendation would be to study, if you're doing specifically Julius Caesar from Shakespeare, is to maybe start with a foundation of Plutarch's Julius Caesar. It might be a little bit tougher to get through as far as English goes. Our library has Plutarch's Lives, this big book that we borrow sometimes. I haven't invested in our own set. There's a few different translations of Plutarch's Lives, but I have heavily researched and reviewed different reviews of the different translations, and so many people have their opinions, and a lot of them are good. I don't have anything bad to say about any of them. There's a lot of wide variety of preferences out there, so I don't think you can really go wrong with what you pick for translation. But anyway, so we read this. We started reading it in here, but I also have it I downloaded it on my Audible account. I bought the audio version of Plutarch's Lives because I think we're going to use it a lot in the future. So yeah, you can also get it on Audible, and then you don't have to read it out loud, and it's a little bit easier to get through. I'm an auditory learner. My brain comprehends better with audio than me reading something out loud, which is the opposite to many. So however is the best comprehension for you. But I appreciated having it on audio, both for hands-free for mom, and I can make a coffee and listen with my kids rather than having to sit and read. But also my brain comprehends it a little bit better. Okay, and I don't see it, I can't find it on my shelf, so I don't know if I recycled it or what I did with it. But we also did a unit by Wild Feather Education, Vanessa, on the evolution of the English language, and she mentions Shakespeare in there, but that was just a really interesting and very appropriate tie-in for our studies. So I will link her unit below. It's kind of probably about the same size as my Shakespeare lesson. We also threw in a printable on ancient Greece, which it was a great printable, but I didn't feel like it tied in really well. The best would maybe be that it kind of showed, we went through the Grecian gods and goddesses that they believed in their pagan religions. And there is if you read Julius Caesar, Jupiter is mentioned and stuff like that. So it could give a little context with that, but I think doing it over again, if I was trying to just focus on Julius Caesar play and Shakespeare, I would probably omit my Greece studies. It wasn't quite as great of a tie-in as I thought. Okay, and the other book that I thought was going to be a great tie-in while we study this stuff was A Brief History of the Anglo-Saxons. And this is a really interesting book. I'm going through it so slow, but I quickly realized it was dry and too much for my kids. So my idea was that I was going to read this myself, and I would narrate it to them. So on the days that I had scheduled for us to read it, it would be Mummy's narration day. And I am still working on it, and it's I haven't been getting through it as quick as I would like. So I would like to keep on reading it, and I'm probably going to be narrating it to them just throughout things. It kind of fell off the bandwagon for our schedule because I wasn't keeping up with our schedule as far as my reading went. But it was very interesting, just the formation of English and Latin to English, and there was lots of tie-ins as we talked about the evolution of language and the importance of Shakespearean English and that kind of thing. So it really tied together, but Mummy needed to probably have this book before we started this and get a foundation of the information. And it's a little nerdy. If you're not really interested in history in a bigger way, maybe this would not be a good book but I'm very interested in that stuff. So I really am liking this book. And with that, Beowulf is mentioned quite a bit in here. And I had printed off this literature and history, Beowulf, by My Texas Homeschool, by Julia from My Texas Homeschool. And she does a great job she has lesson plans in here. You go through the poem. She teaches literary analysis. You highlight certain things. It's really well done. A couple of notes, though. If your kids are young, I would say I'm a big fan of teaching to all ages, and like they just pick up what they pick up. But I did find that it was really difficult, borderline frustrating for my younger ones. And so for my oldest, he can comprehend pretty good, but even like him and I, we were reading some of it today, and it was like, oh man, let's keep reading. Maybe we'll understand who we're talking about. It's so, like, the English is so old. There's so much different vocabulary. She does have vocabulary helps and understanding helps throughout. But it's definitely like a tackle of the older English, but a worthwhile tackle. And I think it went really well with like Beowulf being such a foundational English piece of poetry and historical literature, you know, marrying into the study of Anglo-Saxon and evolution of English and all the rest. It was a good tie-in, a little bit of a side note, but if you wanted to tackle some old school language, I highly recommend Beowulf. And I don't know where else you can find a study like this where you can print out the poem with literary analysis and someone to like help you teach it and have guides and vocabulary stuff right along that. Anyway, this is from Julia at My Texas Homeschool. I will link this resource below. Anything from other shops, from other homeschool moms who make resources like me, I'd love to share it with you guys because, hey, we're a bunch of moms who are passionate about homeschooling and teaching our kids, and we make cool stuff sometimes. So anyway, I'd love to share that with you. Anyway, I think I'm going to end it there. Like I could go into more like all the fine tuning of like exactly what we did. But those are the resources that we used. If you haven't seen my other videos, what I did is I took the resources that I wanted to use, I broke them up into like a 10-week plan, and actually I tried to make it even shorter. Some of the resources that were a little bit shorter, I only planned to use them for 4 or 5 weeks, and it kind of worked out good because we had a busy month and we ended up kind of missing a bunch of time where we were in Winnipeg and we were in different places. And so it was kind of good that I didn't flesh out and fill up those 10 weeks full of resources just because this time of year it just gets kind of busy for school. So I was really grateful to have a little bit of wiggle room that I left. But basically I make a 10-week plan. I take the literal page numbers that we need to read of a certain resource and I divide it by 10 and I say, okay, that's how many pages we need to read per week. So on Mondays, we're going to read, or Mommy's going to narrate the Anglo-Saxons. On Tuesdays, we're going to do our Beowulf literary study. On Wednesdays, we're going to read Plutarch. On Thursdays, you get the idea. And so that's kind of how I've been organizing it. And I'm excited about it. I'm loving that we did it. I'm loving that we're going through Julius Caesar. I also feel like this is a story that they're like to have this foundational story in history. Like Julius Caesar is so pivotal in history. I'm a big fan of Roman history, I guess, and Western roots and stuff like that. So it's really, really interesting to learn about this stuff. And it's a cool foundation. I love that my kids are the ages that they are because Caesar's going to come up again. That's the thing. Like Caesar's going to come up in so much learning as we go and Romans and all the rest. So you might as well start studying some of this stuff now. One of my dreams that I would like to do is I would like to create a Plutarch resource. It's going to have to come out in pieces because there's 48 lives and like I'm not going to cover them quickly, but I would really like to create Plutarch companions for the stuff that I want to flesh out of Plutarch. There is companions out there. They do exist. But I would like to do it in my way with visuals and stuff that my brain connects with because just reading dry stuff doesn't always help me. So that's like a someday thing. And if I ever create that, then I'll be like, here you go. Here's another Plutarch resource. So use this when you're doing the Plutarch Julius Caesar. But anyway, some of these things are so cool to go and read through and dissect and learn about. And it's a cool classical foundation. I'm really becoming a fan of classical foundations and that will, foster our kids' learning and and help them in their future studies as well. So there you go. There's my Shakespeare Julius Caesar recommendations, I guess, for you, and resources. And I'm going to come back on here. I have a few videos in mind, but I for sure want to tell you guys all about when I finally put my term together for our Canadian studies. And that could be interesting if you are Canadian or if you're not and you want to have a term about Canada. We can tell you all about life up here. And yeah, we took a huge road trip. I want to talk about how well that went and the things that we did to make it go amazingly. Or where is he? I don't know. I'm like reversed. Okay, I'm going to go. I don't know how to end my videos, but we will talk to you next time. Bye.